So in the modern job market, we've seen a lot of changes. A lot of these changes have to do with the shifting of power between the actual employers and employees. Right now, I think employees have a lot more power than they did in recent years. And one of the areas where you're really seeing a lot of this change is in the demand for flexibility in work. And it's something that HR, human resources, has to deal with and be able to handle in modern times to be successful, to have the company be successful. What we're seeing is there's a big demand for flex time, telecommuting, job sharing, and you know, being able to adjust the work week and things like that. And HR has to be very smart about it and be able to offer employees good ways to be flexible. And while I don't think this is necessarily going to motivate employees or make them be better at the job, perform better, I think it's a big part of employee acquisition and retention. It has a lot to do with your ability to get the best employees and your ability to keep them. Um, a lot of employees are looking for jobs where it can be flexible if they need it to be. So if you can't offer that, there's a high chance that they're going to go look elsewhere to work. So if you want the best employees you could get, HR has to do a good job of offering jobs where they could transition into a flexible schedule if they need to, or one of the flexible options. Um, Working in teams can be demotivating. I think a lot of the success of teams has a lot to do with management. So management should be able to oversee and make sure that the teams are strong and they're good fits. At the end of the day, we work with individuals, we work with people. Each person has their own personality and their own habits, and they mesh well with some and don't mesh well with others. So HR sometimes has to step in when situations get really bad, but most of the time it's just the typical manager or supervisor is able to tell which team members work well together, which ones don't, and make the adjustments necessary. Um, I think overtime is a good tool. Um, but when a company does, most companies do offer overtime or some overtime pay, where you typically get paid more for doing overtime work. But I think it is important for the company to know why they need their employees to work a lot of overtime. Typically speaking, it's a good way to make up for if you have some kind of shortage or something. You see fast results from overtime in terms of production and being able to increase what your output is. But I think management also needs to pay close attention to why they constantly need overtime. A lot of times it could be a signal for a larger issue in the company and in the performance. So maybe you're understaffed and you're demanding too much overtime. And so beyond that, when you begin to demand too much overtime, you really need to make sure that management is seeing that um, employees aren't being overworked. And there's no real rule about it, about what exact amount of overtime is too much for an employee. So you have to pay very, very close attention because each person is different and the amount of work that it takes to overwhelm them is different. So you have to make sure that even though production and the numbers might look good because these guys are putting in overtime and they're getting their job done and the results are coming in, that could be very short term because if the employees are overworked, collapses, is on the way. So management has to do a very good job of making sure the employees are not overly stressed and not overly worked, and they're not close to having a failure. So these are the kinds of things you need to look at, and also you need to look at maybe if the company might be overstaffed or the goals aren't set correctly. If they are relying too much on overtime, it could be a sign for a larger problem.